I was recently in a small, dusty county town in central China, the kind of place that, in the Western imagination, is supposed to be left behind or stuck in the past. I was sitting with a local mechanic who was trying to fix a specialized pump. He realized he was missing a specific O-ring. Instead of wiping his hands and calling it a day, he pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and went back to his cigarette. Exactly 22 minutes later, a scooter buzzed to a halt outside. A rider in a bright vest handed over a tiny plastic bag containing a single 3-yuan part. The mechanic didn't even look up to say thank you. He just grabbed the bag and kept working. To him, this wasn't a miracle of modern logistics. It was as mundane as the air he breathed. When I told him that in many parts of the US or Europe, getting that specific part delivered to a rural village in under 30 minutes is essentially science fiction, he looked at me with genuine, unscripted confusion. He asked quite seriously, "Then how do people get things done over there?" That look of pity on his face stayed with me. It made me realize that while we in the West are still debating the virtual versus the real economy or watching our postal services crumble under the weight of 5-day shipping delays, a new kind of civilization is being hardwired right in front of us. On January 5th, 2026, the data finally caught up to that mechanic's casual shrug. China's instant retail sector officially crossed the 1 trillion yuan mark. But this isn't just a big number for a corporate earnings call. It is the sound of a physical internet being completed. A system so efficient, it has turned geographic isolation into a relic of the past. While we grapple with food deserts and aging infrastructure, this flow hegemony is quietly rewriting the rules of national power. It's no longer about who has the most data, it's about who can move physical matter with the lowest latency. And as I watched that mechanic finish his repair, I couldn't help but wonder, if efficiency doesn't lie, what does this gap say about who is actually winning the 21st century?
That anecdote is, it's so much more than just a colorful story. It perfectly encapsulates what we're trying to do today.
It really does.
Our mission for this deep dive is to get into the infrastructure, the governance, and really the civilizational structures that allow for that 22-minute O-ring delivery to be just normal, mundane.
Yeah, completely mundane.
It's a massive system, and it's basically a shortcut to understanding how efficiency has been leveraged as, a national asset.
Absolutely. And that speed, that certainty of the transaction, the mechanic trusting the system without a second thought, that's the end point of a decades-long strategic project. So our task is to analyze how this massive state capacity, this really sophisticated algorithmic governance and the market structure have all converged to create this unparalleled efficiency advantage.
The physical internet, as the sources call it.
Exactly. We're trying to identify the architecture of this flow hegemony. Right. And the shift in focus, from competing over data to competing over moving physical stuff with the lowest latency, it's just profound. It impacts everything.
National security, consumer habits, everything.
Okay, let's start unpacking this from the user's perspective, from the customer side. Because this whole infrastructure, this incredibly expensive logistics network, it only exists because a new consumer habit was successfully forged.
Right.
And that habit is instant retail, defined by the promise of everything delivered in 30 minutes.
And that promise, once you make it reliable, it fundamentally shifts consumer psychology. It creates a habit that just eliminates the mental effort of planning ahead.
You don't need to stockpile anymore.
You don't. You eliminate the need for stockpiling rice, toilet paper, or in that mechanic's case, a critical part. This system is engineered specifically to cater to impulse and regency, what we'd call micro demands.
Micro demands. I love that term because it's so precise. It's not about the big planned purchases. It's that small emergency that can just derail your entire evening.
Like running out of cat food 5 minutes before the pet store closes.
Exactly. Or needing a specific cold medicine for a kid late at night. These are immediate, non-negotiable needs.
Precisely. And so when you click that button, you're purchasing more than just the cat food. You're buying instant gratification and certainty.
Certainty is the key word.
It is. This service shatters that time gap, that traditional next-day e-commerce, your Amazon or your Taobao just couldn't solve. And it breaks the spatial constraints of a physical store. You don't care anymore if the shop is closed as long as the delivery time is met.
Which has to fundamentally change the competitive landscape for physical retailers, too. It changes who they're up against.
Oh, completely. The speed of the service redefines the rivals. A veteran supermarket operator in this system, they're not worried about the competitor down the street anymore. Their rival is, and I quote, every single app on consumers' phones. They're competing with Meituan, with Douyin, with the Quick Pharmacy app. If they can't integrate into that digital ecosystem and guarantee that speed, they lose the customer. It doesn't matter how good their physical location is.
And that brings us to the architectural innovation that actually makes this last mile sustainable. We've seen similar pushes toward quick commerce or Q-commerce in the West, right? With those capital-intensive dark stores stuck in expensive urban centers dedicated only to delivery. But this model, the Chinese model, it moved past that.
And what's so fascinating here is the ingenuity of the asset-light transformation.
Right.
They innovated what's called the store as fulfillment center model, or SFC.
Yeah.
So instead of pouring huge sums of money into new dedicated dark stores, the system uses software and algorithms to digitally transform the existing retail landscape. They turn every single existing terminal, that neighborhood supermarket, the corner convenience store, the local pharmacy, into a dual-purpose logistics hub.
That is just a master stroke in efficiency, because you're pushing the inventory closer to the consumer without sinking all that cash into new cold real estate. You're using assets that are already there.
Exactly. The physical store keeps its function as a place to shop, but it gains a new function as a local fulfillment center for all these digital orders. And this immediately, dramatically expands its service radius.
Right. So a traditional store might only serve people within, what, a 1 kilometer walking radius?
Maybe. But with the SFC model and fast delivery, that service radius often stretches out to 3 kilometers, sometimes even 5.
So a legacy player, someone like 7-Eleven South China, with thousands of locations, they can suddenly access and capture all this new revenue from customers who are miles away, customers who've never even physically walked into their shop.
It transforms the fixed cost of their location into a variable revenue stream. And that transformation of physical space into a digital fulfillment node, that's the fundamental economic engine driving this whole instant retail boom.
But I mean, getting thousands of separate decentralized stores to operate with the kind of synchronization you need for a 22-minute delivery, that sounds almost impossible. We're talking about a massive, complex systems engineering project. This is not just putting a supermarket online.
The complexity is staggering. The backbone isn't just scooters. It's built on a really rigorous foundation of AI, big data, and the Internet of Things, IoT. The secret sauce is really in the algorithms that power these intelligent transportation management systems, or TMS.
Okay, so what do these TMS algorithms actually do on the ground?
They're performing dynamic optimization, and they're doing it in real time. They analyze historical sales data to predict, local peaks. They integrate real-time traffic conditions. They're constantly monitoring fluctuating store demand.
So if a bunch of pharmacies suddenly see a spike in demand for flu medicine,
the TMS instantly redirects nearby couriers and optimizes the inventory flow from the closest SFC, the closest store. It's all automated.
and the sources show this has a measurable impact. Implementing these intelligent TMS systems boosts vehicle load rates from about 65% up to 85%.
That's a huge jump.
A 20 percentage point jump in efficiency. And that translates directly into faster, more reliable service. It's how they can keep that 30-minute promise over and over again.
That's the mechanical efficiency gain, yes. But the operational challenge this creates for the store manager, that's what we call the digital divide.
Right.
Imagine being that manager. You're dealing with walk-in customers and you're taking orders at the same time from your own app, from Meituan, from Douyin, which is TikTok's e-commerce arm, and maybe other platforms too.
So if the mechanic in our opening story orders that 3-yuan O-ring on Meituan, how does the system stop a walking customer from buying the very last one 5 minutes before the courier shows up?
That is the core technical bottleneck. Without constant real-time synchronization, you get inventory chaos, you get overselling, you get customer cancellations, and that just destroys the certainty that we said is the real product here.
So what's the solution?
The solution is the Unified Commerce Operating System.
The software that centralizes the chaos.
Exactly. The core fix is to channel all orders, no matter which super app they came from, into one single internal processing stream. We see a great example with 7-Eleven South China, which manages almost 2,000 stores. They didn't build this themselves. They used a digital backbone called DMall OS.
And DMall OS's function was to integrate all of this.
It was absolutely essential. It didn't replace the apps. It integrated them. It allowed for real-time synchronization of everything: inventory levels, pricing, promotions across all their physical stores, and all the external digital channels at the same time. This is the technical bedrock that turns a simple corner store into a high-efficiency distribution hub. It's what lets them win the race against time.
It's pretty striking that this hyper-efficient last-mile system, this daily reality for the mechanic, has a really profound theoretical parallel that researchers in the West have been studying for more than a decade. But without achieving this level of a practical day-to-day implementation.
Right. And what's fascinating here is the direct connection to the concept of the physical internet, or PI. Since about 2011, researchers globally have been talking about PI as this open global logistics system.
The idea being to apply the core concepts of the digital internet, like packet switching, to real-world shipping.
Exactly. So if the digital internet moves packets of data, the physical internet moves packets of physical goods.
Okay.
The goal is total interconnectivity through universally accepted standards, things like encapsulation, interfaces, and protocols. Just like the digital internet moved data packets that are designed for easy routing, the PI concept involves manipulating these modular, standardized, smart containers. They call them key containers.
So the key container is the physical equivalent of a data packet.
Precisely.
But how does that standardization work for something that could hold anything from a tiny O-ring to, I don't know, a pallet of machine parts?
They range in size from small boxes all the way up to maritime containers, but they're all modular and they're all interconnected. And just like a data packet needs a header, these containers have an information part, a header, with a unique worldwide identifier, kind of like an MAC address on your computer.
And that ID is what lets the system track it.
It's crucial. It enables robust automated routing, continuous monitoring, traceability, security. It allows for automated handling and storage anywhere in the network.
And the really key conceptual breakthrough is how this PI redefines ownership and handling, right?
It's a huge philosophical shift, and a logistical one. The physical internet moves the border of private space from the warehouse or the truck inside the container.
Oh, okay.
So once a good is safely encapsulated in a standardized container, what's inside becomes irrelevant to the routing system. The network just focuses on handling, storing, and transporting that standardized box. This modularity means it can move between a truck, a train, high-speed rail, a plane, without ever being unpacked until it gets to the final destination.
So while Western research projects, Modelushka, Iconet, Atropine, they were focused heavily on the theory of PI for years.
The crucial takeaway here is that while the West was theorizing, the speed and the sheer scale of deployment in China, which you can see in that 1 trillion yuan instant retail market, it suggests the system has moved way beyond theory.
It's live.
It is the living, breathing, completed execution of the physical internet concept, just adapted for a civilizational scale.
Okay, so when we talk about completing a physical internet, we have to talk about the massive national infrastructure that connects that micro-level delivery to the macro-level supply chain. And the expansion of the high-speed rail network, the HSR, is just central to this whole structure of Flow Hegemony.
The HSR network it's not just a transportation project. It's a fundamental element of national strategy. It was explicitly designed for regional integration and for promoting balanced growth across this vast territory. The scale of the investment is it's transformative.
And we can see the measurable effect of that investment. The sources really break down the impact at the county level, and you see HSR causing a statistically significant shift in industrial development. It's concentrated primarily in manufacturing, the secondary sector, and services, the tertiary sector.
And the data tells us exactly how that growth is happening on the ground. HSR implementation increased the average value added by 224 million RMB in manufacturing and 220 million RMB in services.
It is huge.
It's huge. And contrast that with the primary sector, agriculture, which saw much more limited gains, only about 42 million RMB on average.
Which sort of explains the mechanism of growth, right? For manufacturing, that speed and connectivity means lower logistics costs and much stronger integration into these huge national value chains. You can move parts or finished goods across massive distances efficiently.
And for services, the greater mobility just stimulates local demand and helps the exchange of knowledge and professional talent.
But the reason agriculture lags is also really important.
It's crucial. HSR provides speed, but a lot of agricultural products need specialized cold chain logistics. That's a completely different infrastructure problem. So the benefit is very targeted towards sectors that prioritize fast, reliable movement over, say, temperature control.
That level of efficiency is incredible. But this national connectivity can't be without some social cost, can it? I mean, when you speed up the center, what happens at the edges? The average effects we just talked about. They seem to mask a deep micro-level complexity.
That's where the analysis gets really sharp. We see clear evidence of the last-mile problem, but it's applied to economic growth itself.
How so?
The economic benefits of HSR, they decline sharply with distance from the actual station. So the precise location of the HSR station becomes a critical factor in determining the local economic impact. It lines up perfectly with the instant retail model's need for inventory to be close to the customer.
If you can't get the supply chain close to the population, the benefit is lessened.
Exactly. And the economic effects are highly uneven when we look across China's 3 economic belts. It reflects this regional heterogeneity.
Okay, so let's break that down.
So Eastern China, which is already the most developed region, it has mature industrial networks, large consumer markets. It saw the most substantial growth. They were best positioned to exploit the new capacity. Especially in the tertiary sector, they recorded an average gain of almost 1.29 billion RMB. They just poured more traffic into their existing, highly efficient pipelines.
And what about the regions that needed the growth the most?
Western China, which started with a lower industrial base, experienced a different but still really significant transformative impact. They showed strong growth in the primary sector, 102 million RMB, and the secondary manufacturing sector at 341 million RMB.
So HSR was a major lifeline for them.
It was. It integrated previously isolated areas into the national economic engine. Central China, though, which is kind of in the middle development-wise, it only saw modest gains. And that suggests that a lack of robust local market integration limited its ability to capitalize on the new infrastructure.
Now, let's go even deeper into the administrative disparity. This is where we see what's called the siphoning effect play out so dramatically.
Analyzing the data by administrative division reveals a really stark contrast. The urban districts and county-level cities, the established urban cores, they showed the largest gains. Urban districts, for example, saw an average increase of 8.71 million RMB in their tertiary sector. They successfully leveraged, agglomeration effects in their established business spaces.
But the peripheral areas, the standard counties, they experienced something very different, a negative outcome in a key area.
They did. For counties, which are typically the less developed areas around the urban cores, the tertiary or service sector actually contracted.
The shrank.
It contracted by an average of 283 million RMB after the HSR opened.
So contraction of services. That means local shops, restaurants, other small businesses are struggling. Why would a better connection lead to that kind of shrinkage?
It's linked directly to accelerated population outflows. Improved connectivity makes it easier for skilled labor and for small businesses to just relocate to the more developed urban centers. And the data confirms this. A significant population decline in the affected counties, averaging about 28%.
So you get the HSR station, but then all your service jobs just leave town because people can now commute or move for better opportunities somewhere else.
Exactly. It reduces local demand and effectively contracts the local service economy.
So the HSR is great for national efficiency, but it also intensifies the economic advantage of the existing urban cores. And it does that at the expense of the peripheral counties.
It acts as an amplifier, not a universal equalizer. Having a direct HSR station amplifies gains significantly, an average increase of 431 million RMB in manufacturing, 631 million in services for areas with the station. But just having a station is often not enough to reverse the trends of service sector decline and population outflow in these less developed counties.
So it tells you that infrastructure alone isn't enough. It has to be paired with policy.
You need business incentives, you need human capital retention strategies to make sure the gains are inclusive.
The scale of these projects and these systemic economic effects we're discussing, it brings us to the question of governance. Specifically, how a civilization handles this level of complexity over time without, collapsing under its own weight. We have to bring up Joseph Tainter here.
Tainter's theory on the collapse of complex societies is it's highly relevant to this system-level efficiency advantage. He argues that societies naturally invest in social complexity. They create more infrastructure, more bureaucracy, more institutions to solve problems.
Right.
But eventually, these investments start to yield diminishing marginal returns. And when the cost of maintaining that complexity outweighs the benefits, that's when societal collapse occurs. That's the civilizational entropy problem.
So the system just becomes too expensive, too layered, and too slow to deliver the benefit it's supposed to. How do you escape that downward spiral?
Tainter suggests the only way out long-term is through fundamental innovation that substantially increases productivity. And this flow hegemony system, this merger of the physical internet with high-speed travel, all unified by algorithms, it represents a massive system-level investment in productivity that is currently yielding very high returns.
It's an explicit attempt to overcome that civilizational entropy.
It is. And the explicit goal of this system is nothing less than achieving absolute resource distribution certainty. It does this by integrating technological power with centralized state power, and this relies heavily on the unique structure of China as a civilizational state.
An amalgamation of a modern nation-state and an ancient continuous civilization.
That structure provides the unified, long-term governing system you need to coordinate projects this large and complex. It allows for radical standardization. The National Unified Market Initiative, which was launched in 2022, is a perfect top-down governance project designed specifically to maximize that internal market efficiency.
That sounds like a direct response to the economic fragmentation that infrastructure can sometimes make worse.
It is exactly that. Its main goal is to dismantle local protectionism and market fragmentation that were holding back consumption and integration. I mean, historically, trying to sell a product nationwide meant navigating 30 different sets of provincial rules, taxes, standards.
A nightmare for any business.
A total nightmare. So the Unified Market Initiative is a cornerstone of their dual circulation strategy.
Yeah.
You boost the domestic market by making it feel like one seamless country, while also making foreign trade easier.
And what are the concrete mechanisms they're using to enforce the standardization across such a huge territory?
They're focusing on unification across all sectors. Key measures include a unified market access system that uses a single national negative list and strictly implementing the fair competition review system to ensure a unified fair competition system. The goal is just total regulatory consistency.
And crucially, standardizing the movement of the most valuable production factor, which is labor.
Absolutely vital. They're creating a unified market for production factors and resources. And this means promoting market-oriented allocation of urban and rural land and establishing a unified national labor market. The specific game-changing move here is removing the household registration restrictions, the hukou, for social insurance participation.
That is a huge structural change.
It is. It enables a more rational flow and effective allocation of talent across regions. Historically, the hukou system tied people to their birthplace for social benefits, which really inhibited mobility. Removing that linkage for insurance just promotes labor flow. It addresses the needs of high-growth areas while trying to break down those regional barriers.
And for businesses, the outcome is predictability and access to scale.
It creates a highly predictable regulatory framework. Foreign and domestic businesses find it far easier to thrive under consistent rules across all provinces. It lowers the risk, and it simplifies the planning you need to do to capitalize on the population scale.
Let's pivot now to the algorithmic layer of this governance. When we talk about the speed of instant retail, we have to acknowledge that the digital platform companies themselves are acting as these powerful structural forces.
They are. They're functioning not just as corporations, but as private governors and as critical intermediaries. Companies like Baidu, Taobao, and Meituan, they mediate these complex relationships between the state, the market, and society. Their control over data, over algorithms, and computing power gives them this really strong influence over public life and logistics.
And this feeds directly into the concept of intelligent governance.
Yes. In this environment, smart governance actively modifies the structure of the state itself. It promotes data-based policymaking and sophisticated social management, the reliance on digital government infrastructure and smart city applications. It just enhances precision and improves the efficiency of public services.
And external shocks, like the recent epidemic, they showed the sheer capacity for accelerated, large-scale tech diffusion. The case study of the health codes is just astonishing in its speed.
It really illustrates the state's unmatched capacity for rapid, large-scale deployment. The health codes started as local city adoptions, right? Piloted in Hangzhou and Shenzhen, where the platform companies are headquartered.
Right.
But the acceleration from that local adoption to nationwide application in over 100 cities, it took only 7 days.
7 days to deploy a tracking and access system across a nation of over 1 billion people.
That speed was possible because of strong central government support accelerating the process, leveraging the pre-existing high platform penetration of apps like WeChat and Alipay, and just using the established digital architecture for immediate scale.
So the platforms engage in this co-governance, but is their participation just a result of external pressure? Is there an internal motivation?
Oh, there is a significant internal motivation, and it's rooted in business necessity. Platforms engage in self-governance, constantly improving their algorithms, regulating content, establishing ethics committees, and also co-governance. Their active participation isn't just driven by state pressure, but by the need for legitimacy. Their core business models rely so heavily on public trust and acceptance.
So they have to actively participate in governance to secure their position.
Exactly, to be seen as reliable intermediaries and governors within their digital domains.
And to bring this scale right down to the ground level, let's just look at the operational execution of a company like Meituan, which is a powerhouse in this instant delivery space.
Meituan's history really demonstrates the prerequisite operational rigor. They successfully navigated the brutal early competitive environment that was known as the War of 1,000 Group Buys. It was a hyper-competitive era that just tested everyone's operational limits. And despite being a relative latecomer to food delivery, they successfully pivoted by leveraging that intense operational experience and their existing ecosystem knowledge.
That ability to pivot and integrate operational focus, that's the practical manifestation of the physical internet in action.
Indeed. And the sheer volume of transactions demonstrates that the physical internet is fully operational. Consider their GeoFO Express service, which is focused on instant retail delivery, just like that O-ring story. Its daily order volume surpasses 2.5 million.
2.5 million a day.
And that's not just a big number. It highlights the massive, high-frequency logistics infrastructure that has to be reliable enough to handle millions of unique, rapid, small-scale demands every single day.
We've established the digital efficiency, the massive physical infrastructure, and the sophisticated algorithmic governance. But to really understand the capacity to execute projects of this magnitude, the HSR, the unified market, the seamless delivery, we have to look at the unique governmental structure described in our sources.
And this brings us to the core concept of the civilizational state. China today is defined as an amalgamation of a modern nation-state and a continuous civilization that spans millennia. This structure provides the deep organizational stability and the unmatched mobilization power you need for these truly vast, system-level projects.
You're talking about projects that fundamentally alter the landscape and the economic structure of a continent.
Exactly. We're discussing projects that are rare in human history because of their scale and complexity. Things like the nationwide high-speed train networks and these massive integrated urbanization programs. The organizational power held by the state lets it execute these transformations efficiently and just quickly.
And the governance philosophy that underpins this capability is critical for supporting that long-term vision. It's not driven by short election cycles.
Not at all. The political culture is characterized by a longer-term vision. They're looking ahead 5, 10, 50 years, and a holistic perception that prioritizes overall stability and shared prosperity over short-term gains. And political legitimacy, crucially, is rooted not just in modern economic metrics, but in traditional concepts. Winning the hearts and minds of the people. Mingxing Shangbei and meritocracy. Shuangsim and Renning.
So Mingxin Shangbei. It isn't just about winning favor. It's grounding political legitimacy in tangible performance. Like delivering that O-ring in 22 minutes, ensuring infrastructure works, lifting people out of poverty.
Precisely. Performance is the foundation of legitimacy, and that philosophical bedrock supports long-term planning mechanisms like the 5-year plans, which allows the state to allocate capital and human resources to strategic goals that take decades to mature.
Like the HSR network or complex environmental targets. This civilizational scale, it creates tangible, unmatched economic advantages, which the sources summarize beautifully in the concept of the 4 supers.
The super large population, super vast territory, super long traditions, and super rich culture. When you combine these factors, they create unique leverage in the global competitive environment.
And starting with the population, it's not just a big consumer base. It's described as a massive and increasingly educated human asset that produces an unmatched scale effect.
And investors understand this deeply. The underlying belief is that if a company can become #1 in China, whether that's in cars, retail, or AI, it may well become #1 globally. Because the operational testing ground is so intense and the scale of deployment is just immense.
The best have to compete there.
The world's best architectural firms compete for projects, forcing maximum innovation just to address the size of the challenge.
And the vast territory offers a unique kind of internal resilience that other nations just don't have.
That's the internal transfer advantage. Think about global manufacturing. As a nation develops, labor costs rise, and labor-intensive industries usually have to outsource overseas to Vietnam, to Mexico, wherever. And that capital, that knowledge, that expertise, It leaves the original nation.
Right.
China's vast territory allows these industries to transfer internally. A textile factory might move from the high-cost East Coast, like Guangdong, 2,000 miles inland to the west.
So the industry gets a new lease on life. But the critical outcome is that the capital, the industrial knowledge, the tax revenue, the intellectual property, it all stays contained within the national borders.
It creates a self-reinforcing domestic value chain. It prevents the leakage of essential manufacturing capabilities, which allows the wealthier regions to move up the value chain into high-tech and services without suffering that industrial hollowing out we've seen elsewhere.
And finally, we can just observe the result of this sheer capacity and the quality of the execution, especially when it comes to national infrastructure.
The quality contrast is significant, and it's physical evidence of the system's capacity. I mean, while you might see infrastructure decay in some older Western urban centers, the capacity to execute is seen in facilities like the airports in Beijing and Shanghai, and critical transport links. For example, the Beijing to Shanghai high-speed rail, it covers 800 miles in less than 5 hours.
Incredible.
These are state-of-the-art systems designed and executed for massive volume and scale. They're the arteries of the physical internet.
And moving to the philosophical foundation of this economy, it's not following a purely laissez-faire Western model.
That's right. Traditional Chinese economics was not purely market economics. It was fundamentally humanistic economics. And this philosophy explicitly linked economic development with improving living standards and overall stability, rather than just pure profit maximization.
So the modern socialist market economy is a blend.
It's a blend. It integrates Western market mechanisms while retaining that traditional humanistic focus.
And this blend maintains the crucial role of state intervention, the visible hand.
The long tradition of state intervention, the visible hand, is leveraged through macro regulation, while at the same time they've mastered the numerical management or micromanagement principles learned from the West. This combination creates an economy that is highly competitive. Just look at the intensity of those platform wars, but it's also incredibly responsive to long-term national strategic goals.
And this system allows for an ambitious, horizon-focused planning cycle that few other systems can match.
The capacity for unified, long-term strategic focus is a clear competitive advantage. This system lets them set and achieve highly specific goals within the 5-year plans. Things like cutting carbon emissions by a specific amount, 17% by 2016, or targeting high-tech industries to grow to 15% of the economy. They're setting the destination on the horizon and mobilizing the entire civilizational apparatus to reach it.
The journey we've traced today, from the theory of the physical internet to the complex reality of a national logistics network that can perform miracles like that 22-minute O-ring delivery, it's fundamentally about system-level integration.
It is the ultimate manifestation of flow hegemony. This capacity to deliver a 3-yuan part to a mechanic in under half an hour is the precise result of an intentional top-down integration. It combines the massive scale of physical infrastructure, like the HSR network, with the precision of digital intelligence AI, unified commerce, algorithms, all supported by a political and civilizational system strong enough to leverage its national scale to achieve this radical system-level efficiency.
The convergence of this functional daily physical internet and sophisticated algorithmic governance, supported by the organizational strength of the civilizational state, it establishes a new global standard of performance. And it's one that's measured not in data speeds, but in the rapid movement of physical matter. Yeah. This confirms that the focus on achieving the lowest latency flow of goods is definitively rewriting the rules of 21st century competition.